Welcome to the show, everybody. I might not be 100% today, but I am here to deliver through injury, through persecution, through suffering. I don't want anyone to ever say once again that I didn't give my heart, my soul, my everything to this podcast while I battle through a challenging injury, both physically and mentally, this afternoon. And I'm going to show you this injury in 1 second. Are you ready for this? Because you might want to close your eyes. You might want to hide your children. If, watching graphical photos or graphical videos of NFL players getting injured makes you cringe a little bit, you might want to close your eyes for the next 5 to 10 seconds. Look at this. Yep. See that right there? My finger got pricked this morning because I needed a wellness exam before the year was over to get a decrease in the premium that we pay for my iHeartMedia health insurance. So, despite the challenges, despite the uphill battle just to sit down in this chair, I am mentally and physically preparing myself to endure all battles and deliver another beautiful podcast to you today. All right, the topics that I want to discuss. One of the topics coming up is the Minnesota Vikings' massive advantage against the Detroit Lions on Sunday. It's a big advantage that the Minnesota Vikings had no control over, and they have really been given a gift when we analyze and examine this massive matchup ahead of this football game. But first, I want to talk about the celebration in the Minnesota Vikings locker room following their victory 27-25 over the Green Bay Packers. A few things. This is the first time the Vikings swept the Packers since 2017. This is the first time ever that a quarterback has won 14 games in their first season with a new team. A little background information. Sam Darnold, after the game, of course, is being interviewed by Tom Rinaldi and Tom Brady of Fox. And the team was waiting to celebrate with Sam Darnold. They were hanging out in the locker room. They were high-fiving each other, I'm sure, and waiting patiently for Darnold to finish up his post-game interviews so they could celebrate together. That's awesome. That's a beautiful thing. It's very cool to wait for your bridge quarterback that's now turned into a $100+ million man this offseason, either from the Vikings or from another team, unless the Vikings franchise take him. So he comes into the locker room, and the team goes nuts. And I got a short snippet of the video right here for you if you have not yet seen it. They lift Sam Darnold up like he's Rudy coming off of the Notre Dame football field, and water spraying everywhere. His hair is soaked. They're chanting and singing a song. And this went on for a lot longer than the 10-second snippet that I just shared with you. Kevin O'Connell sitting on the side, nodding, laughing, smiling, seeing his team celebrate and hoist up a quarterback that's been on so many different destinations that so many teams have given up on. And my takeaway from all of this is have your fun, do what you got to do. If they want to have fun, have fun. If you want to hoist Sam Darnold up over your shoulders like you just won the Super Bowl, go ahead and do it. But the messages it sends me is that this shows me that you have never actually won anything significant during your NFL career. If you're celebrating like you just won a Super Bowl following a victory over the Packers, in which the season's not even over. You're 14-2, and being a wild card team, going on the road against the Rams, the Buccaneers, and another team I think is still an option, and you're celebrating like this. Do it. Have your fun. Go crazy. Do whatever you want to do. But the message it sends me is that you've never won anything before. You don't know what it's like to win a Super Bowl. You don't know that feeling or have that experience of making it to an NFC Championship game or hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. Because when you celebrate like that, you are celebrating small victories at a Super Bowl victory level. Because you don't see Patrick Mahomes celebrating like that after defeating a divisional opponent, the Chargers or Broncos. You don't see Tom Brady during his NFL career celebrating like that after he beat the Jets or the Bills. Because these guys are Super Bowl champions and they have Super Bowl aspirations. I remember one time long ago, I think it was in 2006. We're going back to the NBA a little bit here. 2006, the Dallas Mavericks defeated the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals. Dirk Nowitzki, the Mavericks, they celebrated like they just won the finals. And they lost in the finals to the Heat in 06 when Dwayne Wade went off with Shaq as his second guy. Fast forward 5 years to 2011. The Mavericks are in the exact same position. They win the Western Conference Finals. Do you know who's not celebrating like they just won the NBA Finals? Dirk Nowitzki. And do you know why? Because he felt the ache and the pain of losing an NBA Finals in 06 and was not celebrating too early in 2011. He saved his big celebration for the NBA championship in which he won. It's a mindset thing. And right now, this mindset from the Minnesota Vikings of celebrating this hard after a regular season victory, it's not to my liking. You know, do whatever you want. I'm not going to hate you for it. But is it the mentality that I would have? 14-2. Still got one massive game against the Lions to determine who's the number one seed in the NFC. And you're celebrating like you just hoisted the Lombardi Trophy. It just doesn't sit right with me. I just don't like that feeling of, you know what, let's just celebrate and hoist Sam Darnold up and sing some songs and sing Kumbaya like we've accomplished something this year. Because at the end of the day, what have the Vikings accomplished? And that's what the greats recognize. Mahomes and Brady and Nowitzki, the greats recognize when it's time to celebrate. The greats recognize what are legitimate accomplishments. Because defeating the Packers, sweeping them is awesome. It's a great story. 14-2 is unbelievable. Sam Darnold being an MVP, top 5 candidate this year is nothing anyone expected. And it's great. But when you celebrate like this, you send the wrong signals and the wrong messages to your teammates and to the fan base. What have we won? Nothing. And they're celebrating like they just won the championship. Do it all. Do whatever. Have fun. But this tells me that you've never actually won anything significant before. This reminds me of the Minnesota Timberwolves a few years ago. They were playing a play-in game against the Los Angeles Clippers. This was with Pat Beverly, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns. The Timberwolves hadn't done much in forever before this happened. And they win the game. D'Angelo Russell goes off in this game. And here's the Minnesota Timberwolves, specifically Pat Beverly, after the game.
To go into the playoffs.
Beverly jumping on the scoreboard, taking off his jersey, throwing it into the crowd, walking off the court in tears. Wait. After winning a playoff game? Play-in game, excuse me? A play-in game. Just to get into the playoffs. He walks off the court in tears. That tells me that Pat Bev has never done anything significant in his NBA career if he's celebrating these small moments that massively. Same thing with the Vikings. It tells me that they have not done anything that significant if they're celebrating these small victories that huge. If they're pulling out the entire bag of celebrations when they advance to 14-2. That's just me. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about, the Minnesota Vikings and their big advantage against the Detroit Lions. So the Lions played the San Francisco 49ers on Monday night, a meaningless game from all angles. The Joe Buck, Troy Aikman crew had a tough time making interesting narratives because it was a meaningless game for the Lions and it was a meaningless game for the 49ers. So how do you come with an interesting storyline? Well, the Lions played all their starters, so I guess that's the storyline. Do you risk getting them injured? Do you risk playing them like it's a preseason game? And Campbell played them. Of course he does. That's what Campbell does. Nothing. I haven't thought about that take or opinion, so, whatever it is. But here's the big advantage the Minnesota Vikings got against the Detroit Lions. And there's a tweet from Kevin Seifert. Vikings walked off the field Sunday, at 7:24 p.m. Eastern. Lions kicked off tonight in San Francisco at 8:16 p.m. Eastern, almost 25 hours later. And he continues, for a game that will be previewed from all angles, it's notable that Vikings players are resting today on Victory Monday after a home game while the Lions are in San Francisco awaiting tonight's game, followed by a late flight back to Detroit. Vikings have 30 more hours of rest time. That's a big deal, especially from the Detroit Lions perspective. We're talking about a team that has been struggling with injuries mightily on the defensive side of the ball. And offensively, Detroit will be fine. They put up points every week. But for the Detroit Lions, who are already decimated with injuries, to have less rest time, not just by like a few hours, an afternoon to noon kickoff. We're talking about over a day, 30 more hours of rest and prep. The Minnesota Vikings got more than the Detroit Lions. And we're talking 13, 14, 15 guys injured on the Detroit Lions defense. This is a big advantage for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's a big advantage that they receive not because of their own doing, but because of the NFL schedule makers. Probably before the season, they're thinking, you know what, the Vikings, they're not going to be in it late. It's going to be the Lions division all the way from game 1 to game 17 of the season. And you know what? This will be a toss-up, easy game. No. The Vikings get a huge advantage before this game even starts because they got rest time. And flying out from the West Coast back to Michigan, you played all the starters. Campbell played all the starters. And now they have to figure out how to game plan against the Minnesota Vikings high-flying offense with a defense that's already decimated with injuries. Oh, and now you got 30-plus hours less of prep time and rest time and recovery time to prepare for Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, Darnold on a heater, and an offensive line that's been performing pretty well recently. So that stinks for the Lions, stinks bad for the Lions, and it is a big, big deal for our Minnesota Vikings, who are hoping to clinch the number 1 seed following this matchup. So big things ahead. And it's going to be a very exciting game. A preview will be out later this week. Thank you for watching this episode and for making this podcast a part of your day.